Hi guys, so today I'm going to be making a tutorial on how to draw bird wings, aka feathered wings, and the reference that we're going to be using is the scarlet macaw, because I think these are possibly the best birds to learn how to draw wing feathers on, because all 3 layers of feathers are all different colors, basically. Now I know birds have more than 3 layers of wings, but for this video I'm going to be sticking with 3 layers of feathers. So you can go ahead and break down your wings into 3 different parts of the feathers. You have your primary feathers, your secondary feathers, and your tertiary feathers. They're called something different, but you can just think of them in 3 different chunks. Now there are, like I said before, more types of feathers than this. If you want to go for a more detailed look, then by all means I can make another tutorial, but this is how I normally draw feathers in my commissions because it just really simplifies the wings and makes them a lot easier to draw. For this particular tutorial, I'm not going to be sticking with this base. I'm instead going to use the base that I set up when I first started this drawing. Which is this one. So I'm going to be showing you how to draw wing feathers on a wing that is partially closed. So if you're looking for something else, let me know, but this is what I'm going to be doing for the moment. Like I said, I can do more after this. But yeah, this is what I'm going to be working with. Now for this first layer of wings, you're going to want to do a bunch of little itty bitty feathers, and your hand motion is just going to be really simple. Just like little itty bitty curves. Almost like drawing like a fish scale kind of pattern, and they don't have to be perfect. That's the neat part about feathers, is that they all look really different. But normally I only do the really detailed ones, the really detailed feathers on the outside, but I normally go in and just add a few little itty bitty ones. You don't have to if you don't want to, but just trust the process. So the first layer of feathers is going to be really itty bitty, and then the second layer of feathers is going to be longer, and then you're going to have your primary, or the flight feathers, which are going to be really long and distinguished, but I'll show you all that. Now for the secondary layer of feathers, your motions are going to have to be a lot more purposeful, and they're probably, you're probably going to want to be, you're going to want them to be a little sharper, so maybe add a little bit more of a point. You don't have to. Of course, it depends on what type of feathers you're drawing. If you're drawing like owl feathers, you'd want them to be a lot more rounded, but if you're drawing a bird like, I don't know, a songbird, you'd want them to be a lot sharper and more pointed than this. These feathers are going to be different. There's not going to be little curvies. These feathers are going to stretch all the way back. And then you can actually just go ahead and draw them all the way back, reaching. So then you have those kinds of feathers, the secondary feathers. Your flight feathers are going to be a lot sharper than them and a lot more distinguished. Really, no matter what type of bird you're drawing, you're going to want to put a lot more effort into each individual feather. Now, flight feathers bird wings have left and right feathers. Hi, it's Cam. I wanted to make a note real quick. I know, just wait. I actually have some feathers in my room that I got from like a craft store forever ago. But this is an example of a right feather. You see how if you put, I have 3 feathers here. If you put this feather and all these feathers in front of you, you see how this one curves out in a way and this one curves out in a way, but they're facing 2 different directions. Now I could put this one over here, I could flip it upside down, but it still doesn't look right. It's because these 2 here are left feathers and this is a right feather. Now I actually have a box of these feathers. I just picked these 3 at random, but yeah, these 2 are left feathers, so these guys would go on the left side of the wing. So imagine if my hand was like the bird wing, then the wing would spread out like that and the feathers would go that way. But if I had this feather out, it would be facing the wrong direction. So left and right feathers are very important. And like I said, see how the top of the right feather is a lot smaller than the bottom of the right feather. And the top of these feathers are a lot smaller than the bottoms, because direction matters, people. Learn your left from your right. I still have to do that, but that doesn't matter. Okay, we're going back. We're going back to the video. Left and right feathers, very important. Most people only notice it truly on the flight feathers, because when flight feathers, there's an itty bitty little curve or a little point or an edge, and then you curve out and then you go back, because one side is a lot longer than the other one. So, you know, this side is significantly longer. Well, maybe not significantly. I messed that up a little bit. There. Ugh. Now it's a lot more noticeable, but this is how feathers look. One side is a lot shorter and one side is a lot longer. As well as that, your flight feathers are going to be a lot more distinguished. They're not going to stick together as much as your tertiary or secondary feathers will. So there's going to be some gappage between them because they're so big, and there's really not that many flight feathers in your average bird's wings. They don't have that many, and therefore there's going to be gapping because they also have to move the most. They're the longest, therefore they bend the most. That was a terrible last feather, but you'll see my point. These feathers are much more distinguished. There's all this area right here that is clear. Now, the closer you get to the animal, or I guess if you're like me, you're drawing an alicorn, or implying that you're drawing a bird, the flight feathers are not going to be the same all the way down, which is similar to what I was saying earlier, how there are many different kinds of flight feathers. Technically, all of the feathers that I have highlighted in blue are not all flight feathers. Really, only these feathers here would be considered flight feathers. These feathers here are called something else. While they are still very long, they are a lot closer to these feathers, the secondary feathers, than your primary feathers. They're going to be a lot shorter. They're not going to be as distinguished. Although these feathers still definitely have a left and a right side, they are going to get shorter. Maybe not less thick. They're not going to get skinnier, but they are going to get shorter the closer you get to the animal's body. So you're probably not going to really want to, you're not going to need to draw the feather shaft like I did for these flight feathers, emphasize the right or the left. You don't really need to do that for these feathers down here. You can if you want, if you're going for a lot more detail. But I'm just going to, I don't know why I decided to make the tutorial today. I can't draw feathers for nothing right now. Oh, it's bad. Okay. They're gonna be a lot more rounded. Also, the closer you get to the body, the flight feathers tend to be very pointed, especially when you're talking about certain breeds of birds. But they're going to be a lot more rounded the closer you get to the body, and I did not follow my guideline at all. Hold on. I'm sorry, these feathers are messing me up. But hold on. Yeah, so this is just a basic sketch. Let me get rid of that. Yeah, now you can see the 3 different layers of feathers. Now hold on, let me switch to my Safari, because I have,
One eternity later.
Okay, I finally found it. But like I said earlier, there are a lot more different kinds of feathers. Now, the ones that I highlighted are the primary, secondary, and tertiary feathers. Oops. But as you can see, this chart has a lot more different kinds of feathers highlighted, where I only listed 3. They have about 7 listed. 7 different types of feathers. These are the flight feathers. These are technically primary feathers, but they are not called flight feathers, and they're all going to look different. But it just depends on how detailed you want to go. Like I said, mine was only showcasing 3 different types of feathers, obviously because of this chart. And you know, if you look at real birds, you're going to be able to see that there are more different types of feathers. But for the case of this tutorial, there are only 3, and that is how you draw them. Of course, if you are going for a more realistic look, you can always use the charts that you can find on the internet to map out better the different types of feathers that are more distinct. And after you clean it up, that's pretty much it. Bye! Hope this was helpful.